It took me 6 years to write the book. It was one of these six. The first S is silence. The A is for affirmations. Robert Kiyosaki, probably one of the biggest advocates of the miracle morning. I handed him a book at a conference that we both spoke at. Never thought he'd read it. He read it 3 times. He said it's transformed my marriage, my physical health, my mental well-being, and I think he said his business as well. If you don't start thinking and living differently than 95% of our society, you will end up like them. The survival rate was 20 to 30% for my cancer, right? So this wasn't a common cancer, it was a very rare cancer. And when I went into the hospital, you mentioned my lung being drained, my heart was failing and my kidneys were failing. They said, if you don't start chemo, you have 1 to 3 weeks to live. When you go through difficult times in your life, I believe that it's my responsibility to share what I can that can help other people in any way that I can.
Are you glad that you went through that experience? Hal Elrod, it's always good to see you, man. You are in the new studio. You were in the old one, but this is round 2 with us.
Dude, this is nice, man. I always feel worse about myself when I hang out with you. So
my ambition with any studio that we make is to have an environment that I want to just chill in. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's like my escape from the office. So I get to come hang out in the studio.
Yeah. See, I don't want people to have my home address and I only have a home office. So I don't ever bring anybody over to my
I know, because when you first moved there, every time I would come over, you'd be like, don't give this address to anybody. I was like, all right, man.
We had some stalker situations, so I was trying to escape.
Well, we can talk about, you moving to Texas and then moving out to the middle of nowhere to, protect yourself from the inevitable. But I want to talk, last time we spoke quite a bit about, last time I had you on the podcast, we talked a lot about the business of the miracle morning and some of the elements of sort of crafting it's not even like a perennial bestseller, but it's a perennial. Is that like,
that's what it is, I think.
Is it?
It's a perennial's perpetual, basically.
Is it? What's the difference between that and like, I think of perennial as annual or related to annual. Maybe I just don't know the word.
Yeah, perennial is also a flower, I think. I'm totally lost on what we're talking about. But I think a perennial bestseller is a bestseller that the book just keeps selling. It becomes like a word of mouth phenomenon, right? And so it just keeps selling year after year after year after year.
Yeah. Well, that's why I thought year after year.
Yeah.
We should get Ryan Holiday to tell us what the fuck we're doing.
That's right.
But we didn't talk about like what the miracle morning was at all.
Okay.
I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about the app a little bit, and then just sort of the progression of things. So for those that don't know the miracle morning, I will start, and I want you to explain it, but I will start by saying that I didn't really understand what was going on when you first got really excited about it and then launched the book. And I was, even though you don't remember this.
You were there, buddy, helping me put orders into Amazon until 2 or 3 in the morning. Yeah. I have forgotten that a few times I don't remember. I don't forget anymore.
Yeah. I remind you, shamelessly.
Yeah, that's why.
I feel great about it.
Yeah.
But you launched it at midnight Pacific time in 2012.
Yeah. 12. That was, I wanted a date that I wouldn't forget.
Right. So what the fuck's the miracle morning and why does anybody care?
The short answer, I don't have those. But the short answer, it's a morning ritual, right? And it is what makes it unique. And I've realized this actually with, I know we're going to talk about the app a little bit, which I think is an interesting development. But I realized when I was explaining the app to people, that's what makes the miracle morning unique. The same thing makes the app unique. And what I mean is like, there's a lot of meditation apps out there. There's a lot of morning routines where you wake up and maybe you meditate in the morning or you go for a run. What I did is in 2008, when I was, at rock bottom financially, I was like, I need to turn my life around. I need to figure out what the world's most successful people do every day. What are their rituals and routines? I'm going to need to start figuring that out so that I can turn my life around. And it was really quickly, I went, okay, there's 6 practices that seem to be consistent, no matter who you study or ask throughout history, that they attribute their success to. It was one of these 6. And these are the S.A.V.E.R.S for memory's sake, the acronym S.A.V.E.R.S. The first S is silence. And it started as meditation. But it could be prayer, it could be breath work, it could be reflection, right? Just spending that time in peaceful, purposeful silence to calm your nervous system, gain clarity, get centered for the day. So that's the S in S.A.V.E.R.S. The A is for affirmations. And affirmations, I think, are the most misunderstood form of personal development or self-optimization, either because of Stuart Smalley's Saturday Night Live skit, right, in the 90s, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. Or because just a lot of self-help gurus have taught, like, just affirm what you want to be as if you were the thing, right? If you're struggling financially, just say, I am rich, or I am well. And it doesn't work. And people are like, the affirmations are silly. They're goofy. And so for me, I figured I studied all these different ways of doing it. And it was like, oh, you can do affirmations in a way where you're not just affirming something that you wish were true. You're actually affirming what you're committed to in terms of an outcome or a habit. Then you're affirming why it's a must for you so that you're keeping that top of mind. Then you're affirming which actions you're going to take and when you're going to take them so that you're keeping the things clear that will get you where you want to go, right? The V in S.A.V.E.R.S is visualization. And I always say, look at the world's greatest athletes. Like, they visualize themselves, not just, this isn't the vision board, right? See, the whole goofy, like, oh, make a vision board. And then all those things will magically attract into your life through the law of attraction. No, this is the way that athletes visualize themselves performing in the midst of difficult circumstances on the court or the field at their best. They mentally rehearse it so that when it's time to actually play the game, in this case, the game of business or the game of life, you've already gone there in your mind and in your body and in your emotions. You've mentally rehearsed performing at your best. And then it's easy when you're out there. The E is for exercise, just starting the day with some movement. The R is for reading. You know, a lot of the most successful people in the world, they'll tell you, that's the books I read, right? And the final S is for scribing, which is a fancy word for writing or journaling. I'll wrap this up by, I'll quote Robert Kiyosaki, or I'll paraphrase. Robert Kiyosaki, author Rich Dad Poor Dad, is probably one of the biggest advocates of the miracle morning. I handed him a book at a conference that we both spoke at. Never thought he'd read it. He read it 3 times. And at the end of he had me on Rich Dad Radio, and he said, Hal, before the miracle morning, every successful person on the planet swears by at least one of the S.A.V.E.R.S. You know, a lot of successful people, they do one of these or maybe 2 or 3 at the most. He said, in all my years of personal development, I've never met anyone that did all 6 of these timeless best practices. And he said, I now do it every single day. And he said 3 areas of his life. He said, it's transformed my marriage, my physical health, my mental well-being, and I think he said his business as well. But so that for me that's the miracle morning. It's not just waking up and doing 1, 2, or 3. It's doing all 6 of the, arguably the world's most timeless, proven personal development practices.
I guess, so first and foremost, I look at a lot of the things that you just said in the morning rituals as it's just good to have good habits. And it's good to start the day with good habits that reinforce good behaviors that you want. And I look at most of the things on that list that way. Why does the idea of the miracle morning continue to pick up steam and perpetually dominate and create bestseller status across the board? How much more can you say than wake up early, do your shit, and live a good life?
And all that's been said before, right?
Right.
I think there's a couple of things. I've definitely reverse engineered my book in terms of like, okay, why is answering that exact question? Like, why is this such a word of mouth phenomenon? Few things. One is I think that my story is a part of it, right? So for those that don't know, I was hit in a car accident when I was 20, hit head on by a drunk driver, found dead at the scene, died for 6 minutes, came out of a coma 6 days later, told I would never walk again, and bounced back from that in this really inspiring way.
And since then, you've been taking life head on.
Yeah, that's right.
That was your first book.
That was my first book, Taking Life Head On. Yeah.
Dude, I actually had somebody in studio a week ago, and I'm sitting with this kid, and he apparently was from Michigan, where I'm from, grew up in Cutco, but like 10 years after us.
Okay.
And read Taking Life Head On.
Shut up.
Yeah. And he was like, oh yeah, I read Hal's first book. And when he said that, and I just in my head reassociated it to Miracle Morning. Yeah.
That's
and then
funny.
he said that and I was like, oh shit, that was his first book.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's a part of it, right? Is that a lot of people, when I meet them that are Miracle Morning fans or that practitioners, that my story is the thing. They're like, man, your story inspired me.
Yep.
So there's that. That's a piece of it. It's like, oh wow, if this guy, after what he went through, could bounce back, man, the stuff that I've been using as an excuse and justification for me settling in my life. And that was a big part. The book took him on a journey of like acknowledging what I called the 95% reality check. And it was based on a Social Security Administration study that said 95% of people at like retirement age are dependent on either the government or family to take care of them. And I said, look, if you don't start thinking and living differently than 95% of our society, you will end up like them. It's inevitable. No, do you think any of them thought they would end up there? No, they all had big hopes and big dreams and thought it would turn out. You have to start there. Like, it was a real big gut check in the beginning of the book. Like, oh, dang, okay, I have to take my life seriously. Like, this is a serious thing. If I don't decide now's the time, tomorrow will be different. I'll decide tomorrow. Like, right. So it was it took me 6 years to write the book. I was so intentional, and I rewrote it. And then I went back and I read it and I rewrote it and I rewrote it. And then one other piece is that, is the way I wrote the book is I wanted it to play like a movie, where I wanted every chapter to end and it was like a cliffhanger, and they're like, oh crap, I got to keep reading. So that was a part of it. And then the last thing I'll say is the S.A.V.E.R.S acronym. I did not understand the importance of that. And that was me writing the book. And one day I was frustrated. I had these 6 practices, no acronym. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't figure out a way to link them. And I went for a walk out of my office to get some air. I was frustrated. And my wife, Ursula, caught me in the hall and she goes, "Hey, sweetie." "Hey." And she goes, "What's wrong?" I said, I can't figure out how to put this book together. I said, all of the great authors have some sort of formula. Like Stephen Covey's got the 7 habits of highly successful people. Robert Kiyosaki's got the cash flow quadrant. I have these 6 hodgepodge practices that I didn't invent any of them. They've been around for thousands of years, and I can't figure out how to organize them. And she goes, "Why don't you get a thesaurus and see if you can swap any of the words and then create an acronym that people will remember and they can just run through the acronym?" And I was like, I gave her a kiss. I was like, brilliant. And so meditation became silence, mm-hmm. and journaling became scribing, and the A-V-E-R stayed the same: affirmations, visualization, exercise, and reading, right? So the S.A.V.E.R.S were born. And I didn't realize, but if you go into the Miracle Morning Facebook group, there's 350,000 people in there. More often than not, or as often as people say, I did my Miracle Morning, they go, I woke up and did my S.A.V.E.R.S today. I love my S.A.V.E.R.S. And even Robert Kiyosaki in the Miracle Morning documentary, he said, I love the S.A.V.E.R.S. He goes, because my brain, he goes, which is going 1,000,000 miles an hour. Yeah. I wake up and I go, okay, S, I do that. And then I go, what's next? A, I do that. He goes, so it works for my brain. And for a lot of people, it's like they can easily do it. So it made it accessible, made it memorable, and made it shareable.
Yeah, I think that's like a phenomenally important point that people frequently sweep away as a pedantic detail.
Totally.
And I think that there are tons of these things in marketing and in life in general, but specifically marketing and design, where people discount the small details and fail to realize that the small details are the big details. Acronyms are one of them. Yeah. Any little thing that you can do that will stand out and create memorability makes a world of difference. And there are, I mean, Apple is a really good example of design excellence.
Yeah.
But there are tons of things in their aesthetic design that is just simple, that keeps things together. And naming conventions are one of those.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If I wouldn't, I mean, I really believe if it wasn't for that moment in the hallway with my wife or somewhere that acronym, if it wasn't for the S.A.V.E.R.S acronym, the Miracle Morning would not be a word of mouth phenomenon.
So I want to talk about affirmations for a second. Did you ever feel like a fraud when you were doing affirmations?
No, and that's because you're doing them the wrong way. So I'm glad you brought this up.
I didn't say I did. I asked you if you did.
Oh, yeah. Well, I thought you just sounded like you were starting to say, I feel like a fraud. Yeah. No, but the way that affirmations are taught, people feel like a fraud because they're like, I am blank, and it's an aspiration, not a reality. And so I am wealthy. No, you're not. You're broke. Oh, damn it. Yeah, you're right. You know?
Well, sometimes I feel like more accurately with me, I've gone through phases where that's been a significant part of my life, and phases where it hasn't. For me, sometimes I feel like I'm trying to trick myself deliberately if I'm doing affirmations.
Yeah.
Meaning that I'm saying something that is reiterating a desire or a belief or a path. And it is aspirational, and I'm not lying to myself, but I'm stating something that's not there yet or that I'm aspiring towards. At a minimum, sometimes I just feel like I'm trying to program myself manually.
Yeah.
And I have friction with that.
Yeah. So this is the way that I teach affirmations and that I practice. I mean, everything that I teach is what I practice. Miracle Morning wasn't a book idea. It was my morning routine. And then I, shared with my coaching clients, and it worked for them. And so I wrote a book about it. But with affirmations, so there's 3 steps that I do in the affirmation. Step 1 is affirm what you're committed to, right? So I don't say I am a millionaire or I am a whatever. I say I am committed to blank. And the blank could be a result that you're like, no matter what, I'm going to do everything in my power, no matter how long it takes to, generate $10 million in revenue, whatever it is. So I'm committed to blank. It could be, the blank could be the outcome. Or it could be the habit. I'm committed to exercising 5 days a week, 20 minutes a day, no matter what. There is no other option. And that's how I word it. I'm committed to blank, no matter what. There is no other option. So that's step 1. And now you're not a fraud, because you're only a fraud now if you lack integrity, you don't follow through with what you said you're committed to, right? But the statement itself is no longer some aspirational, I am whatever, that you're not yet that thing. It's, no, I'm committed to this. So slight shift in language. And here's the thing, this, the key to success in anything in life is your level of commitment. So the beauty of that is you're reinforcing that every morning. You're going, I'm committed to this. I'm committed to this. If you only said it once and you weren't committed in the past, then the past is going to win and you're going to go back into your old habits. But if every day you're keeping that commitment top of mind, you literally, I always say that what you affirm repeatedly becomes your reality. So if you affirm that you're committed to this thing repeatedly, day after day after day after day, then you're becoming committed.
Yeah. I mean, I think I look at it very much like measure what matters. And it's like anything in life, whether it's business or it's sports, or if you're not tracking those things and you're not looking at what the goal is, the expectation of getting there is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So affirmations, I think, are the same way in a lot of ways if you're doing them that way.
Yeah.
What do you think the value is in saying it out loud versus reading it?
I honestly don't know. I read it. I don't say it out loud typically, but I've heard, I've heard people say that, that creates more of an impact. I do say read it with emotion, like when you read it, don't read it passively. Like you say, I'm committed to losing 10 pounds, no matter what there's not, versus I am committed. Even if you're thinking it, but you're thinking it with conviction, with passion. So I don't know. I also have had people tell me that they will record their affirmations into like their iPhone digital voice recorder. Then they'll listen to them back while they're running on the treadmill. So, and that I haven't done it. I get my old habit of how I do with my things, but I think that's a great idea.
Well, to that end, you have now subjected yourself to a life where you were talking about morning routines probably every day of your life for more than a decade.
Yeah.
Is it boring? Does it bother you ever that you have to be like just hammering away at this thing routinely and you're constantly asked about it?
Yeah, not really. Cause I think that for me, like I just I'm doing a 5-month training for doTERRA, the company. And they're I don't know, $100 million, $200 million marketing, network marketing company. But so the first month was Miracle Morning, right? And then I'm like, all right, got to create back to when I used to create new content for like weekly or monthly coaching programs. And so month 2, I did a leadership training, and often I'm talking about my story, and I have other books, right? So I'll do the miracle equation, So and for whatever reason, I get into a zone of like authentic passion because I'm like, I know this is going to help somebody that's listening. So I think that for me, right, because it's not about me. If I was like, oh, I'm bored talking about this, that's making it about me. But I'm like, this is for somebody else, And so how can I deliver this in the most authentic, excited, way that I possibly can? So yeah.
Do you think there's any element of it that is not the passion for helping the other people, but is the realization that because you've done it so many times, you're really good at explaining it, so it's going to hit?
Maybe, but it depends. I mean, sometimes when I'm explaining it, similar to when I'm probably you, like where you're in your head going, I've already heard this before. I'm going, I've already said this before. And am I saying it too much? am I giving them enough context? Should I be saying this shorter? So like there's this second insecure voice in my head of like, but like my speech for sure, that like I'm really, I'm better at like when I'm on stage speaking. I've done it so many times and my speech is very close to the same every time. And I know how it's going to land. I know people are going to, it's going to really impact them. So that for sure, the answer to your question that like, I know I'm good at this. But if I'm on, I don't know, other contexts, podcasts that are fluid, that aren't right, like a speech, I'm in control of the whole thing.
Right.
I'm not in control of the podcast, or, you know what I mean? So, so even though that's what's interesting too, right? So I'll explain one piece of it, right? Maybe based on the question that you asked me, but in a speech, everything flowed together where I'm like, oh, should I have explained something else before I got to the, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So there's a lot of like inconsistency when it's an interview. So, yeah.
Yeah, man. I think that's one of the really challenging things about an interview format.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that, and it could be podcasts, could be traditional media. Podcasts, I think, tend to be easier in terms of the format. But when you have somebody that you're talking to that has a very different communication cadence than you, that's probably the nicest way I could say that. It's difficult to deliver complicated concepts.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, calm the fuck down. I haven't got the foundation down yet.
No, totally. Yeah. Like I've done interviews before on podcasts. I remember this one with, I think his name was Mark Groves, but I went back and watched it. I was like, oh my God, that was the perfect interview. Right. So both of us,
except for the one that we did last time.
Except for that was that was another one. But like it was, I don't know if it was, he's a great interviewer. It was the synergy. I was on that day and probably all of the above.
Yeah.
But I'm literally like, if I could duplicate that interview every time, oh man. Yeah. So
when I was much younger, I used to, there's going to be a point to this, I promise.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. I don't like the way it's starting.
When I was much younger, I remember women saying, you're a really good kisser. And I didn't know how to respond to that. And eventually it came to me that my response would be, no, we kiss very well together.
That's a smooth line.
Isn't it right? It's a good response.
Yeah.
But I also very much believe that.
Yeah.
And
that is true. Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe the same thing about conversation, right? I think that it is very much a two-person activity and you feed off each other's energy.
Yeah.
And there are, and I think we all know this sort of through life. There are just some people that charge you and some people things feel effortless.
Yeah.
And you can just be present and go with it.
Yeah.
And definitely interviews fall into that category for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about Kathy Heller. Like I've been on shows and it's like, this feels so good.
Yeah. Right.
This feels so good. It's fun. It's easy. I love you. I remember when Kathy Heller, her podcast is Don't Quit Your Day Job. She's phenomenal. But, I told her then, I'm like, I love you. I just felt so much love toward her. And it's just who she was. Like, she's just this really loving, beautiful, person. Just like you, Brad. I mean, it's like the same.
I feel like,
and you're a great kisser. I haven't told you that in a while.
Well, I don't know where to go with that.
This took a turn.
Yeah. Where's Justin Donald when you need him? Always good for some inappropriate jokes. The Miracle Morning thing, you went a bunch of different paths with it. One was creating a documentary, creating the movie, which I'm in. The other,
important,
very briefly, the other is you created an app.
Yeah.
And I guess I want you to...
We also created a dozen books. I think it's important to the book series was the first thing that we spun off of the initial Miracle Morning book.
Yep.
Then we started a series of books, which now there's 12 to 15 of. And I want to always acknowledge Honor A. Corder, became an instrumental part of that. She helped me to produce that series, and co-authored those books with me. But, and then the movie came out. Yeah. Yep. And then I think the app is probably the most recent thing.
Well, and that's kind of where I wanted to go with it because I've heard you say before that the intention of the Miracle Morning, the mission of the Miracle Morning was originally it was to change 1 million lives one morning at a time.
Yep.
And that mission, after selling 3 million plus copies, changed to elevate consciousness one morning at a time. And if I look at sort of the path that you went down, the Miracle Morning as a book was consistently the thing that was growing, thriving, accelerating.
Yeah.
The offshoot books, the rest in the series, never sold anywhere near what the original one did. and the movie also didn't get the same attention that the original book did.
Sure.
What has your experience been with those at large, and what brought you to the app ultimately?
So what's interesting, and I did not know this until I don't know, a couple of years ago. I was doing some research for our accounting or something, but the Miracle Morning series books have sold over 1 million copies combined
Collectively
across the series, which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So that's a dozen books. That's what we're looking at, 80,000 some copies per. So that was wild. I had no idea.
That's notable.
Yeah. And then, but yeah, the original book, still the flagship book, has done the best. So the app has been the most requested resource, since the Miracle Morning book's been out, which is, hey, when you come out with an app. And we actually had an app initially. It was a fellow Cutco guy, had a company, and they built an app for the Miracle Morning, and it was super basic. And then they went out of business, and the app disappeared after a year. So that was like a nothing burger. But for years, people have said, Hal, I use 6 different apps for my Miracle Morning. I've got a meditation app, an affirmations app, a visualization app, a journaling app. I use, iBooks for reading. I would love to have like an all-in-one app. And so I got quotes over the years, but it was like 150, 200 grand to develop that level of an app. And I'm like, I'm not in the app business. I don't want to, that literally, I might throw that money away and never see it again. So I was never willing to risk that kind of money. And then our mutual, friend, or acquaintance friend, Josh Eidenberg, he develops apps, and he was always, Hal, you need an app. And I just kept saying, no, I can't justify. I don't want to risk that amount of money or invest that kind of money. And he finally one day said, how much money would you be willing to invest to test this out? And then we could sell the app and reinvest the profits to build this ultimate app that you want. But what about for starting a really simple but effective basic app? And he said, how much money would you be willing to throw at that? I'm like, $10,000. I could give you $10,000. I may never see it again. Go create, an app. So that's what we did.
Crazy.
And he developed it was basically a habit tracking app, but specific to the savers, right? So every day you checked off your and it tracked which savers you did each day, and you did a 30-day challenge and that kind of thing. And then we put in some simple, like a built-in journal, which was very easy to code, right? It was not expensive. And then a couple other features. And so that's what we started it at, and we sold it for $5 per app. And the first year we sold 15,000 of those. So $75,000. And we reinvested all of that money into developing the ultimate Miracle Morning, all 6 practices app. Year one, 75,000. And then at the end of that year, once we had developed an app, we created a subscription model where we partnered with this gal, Lucy Osborne. She's the voice of the Miracle Morning app. She's amazing.
Oh, crazy.
And we vetted a bunch of, we tried different, auditioned different people. She was phenomenal. She now does, so there's new content coming out all the time. There's over 500 affirmations. There's journaling prompts. There's 150 guided tracks. So you literally press play and it guides you through all of your savers. And you can organize it. You're like, okay, I just want to do visualization. So there's these little symbols for each of the 6 practices. And so you can go, I want a track that will do all 6, or I want just a track that'll do a visualization and affirmations, right? And so now, business-wise, year 2, the app did year 1 of the subscription did $368,000 in revenue. So from 75 grand selling a $5 app, we then made the app free. And then a subscription, it was cheap initially. It was inexpensive. It was like $8.99 a month or $38 a year, something like that. Mm-hmm. Earned $368,000 in revenue year 2.
Damn.
And then this is year 3, and we're already over $500,000 in revenue, and it's August. And so I think we'll do $700,000 to $800,000 in revenue just for the app. So it's growing rapidly. And this is what I care about as an author. It's always like, what are the reviews?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's September also, just so that we're on the same page, but.
Is it really? Oh, you're right. It is. Yeah.
But the reviews.
Yeah. But like on Amazon, right? Like if the book's selling a lot, but you're getting crap reviews, that's not going to be a perennial bestseller.
No.
If the app is selling a lot because you have an email list or something, but you're getting crap reviews. So the app has 5,000 reviews across the App Store and the Google Play Store, 4.9 out of 5 stars.
Jesus.
And so many people say, which gets me excited because I'm not a big app guy. For certain things, but not for Miracle Morning, ironically. And so many people say that this is what I needed. I needed the accountability and the hand holding of this app. They'll say, I did the Miracle Morning for a year. I fell off for a year. I got the app. Now I'm on day 365 consecutively, right? So the app's it's been a huge win in terms of the value add for people, for readers, and then business wise, it's, it has, the goal is that it becomes the next Calm or Headspace. And last thing I'll say is that's the unique differentiator. Calm is a meditation app.
Right.
Headspace is a meditation app, and they might have some visualization in there. Miracle Morning is meditation, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and journaling all in one app.
How has the Miracle Morning app impacted book sales?
I always told Josh, I'm like, because Josh is thinking, we got to advertise. I said, Josh, the reason our numbers are so good is because they're coming from reading the book, right? And in the book, it says we released an updated edition of the book in December, and it has in there like, hey, download the app if you like apps. It'll, it's free, and you can upgrade to the paid subscription if you want. But that was always my theory. And so really exciting data that's come back recently is the conversion for someone who's read the book is like 28.9%. Don't quote me. I'm making up the number. But if they haven't read the book, it's like 27. It's like right below it. So people that haven't read the book are still they're liking the free app. They're converting to the paid app. And then, so to your point, that would also make sense that they're going to read the book. And right now we're working on how do we promote the book better in the app.
Yeah. I mean, certainly doing, like a one click to Audible or something.
Yeah.
Someplace to buy it.
And we have book summaries in the app too. That's what we did for the reading section. And there's new book summaries coming out every single month.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah.
That's cool. How many books are being sold right now, 12 years later?
We just did our huge push with the new edition. We did an updated and expanded edition in December. Wow. Added 70 pages of new content. And the reason why is, like we talked about, when you go back and hear your own voice, you're like, this sucks. I was terrible. Whenever I went back and read the Miracle Morning, I'm like, oh my God, I could have done so much better at this book. And it was self-published. So I was able to, I probably updated it 3 or 4 times over the last decade. Like I did make minor changes, but I always wanted to do like a full revamp. And I added 70 pages of new content. So I literally got to go back, rewrite every page of the book. I mean, it's the same basic book, right? But I added 25 pages to the S.A.V.E.R.S section. It's kind of like, hey, when I wrote this book initially, I was only a year or 2 into the Miracle Morning, or I guess 6 years when it finished, but a year when it started. And then I was really a beginner, if not intermediate.
Yeah.
And so now I know so much more about each of these practices. So I was able to, in this new edition, take somebody from beginner, to intermediate to advanced throughout the S.A.V.E.R.S. And then I added 2 new chapters, The Miracle Life, Your Path to Inner Freedom, the subtitle, and then The Miracle Evening, which is my evening ritual, one of the biggest questions always, like, what's your evening ritual? I would get that all the time.
Going to bed at 8?
Yeah, exactly. Going to bed at 9.
Escaping from dinner is way too early.
I do. Yeah. My social life goes to the back burner of my Miracle Morning. But anyway, so the new edition came out, and we just did a huge push, bestseller, or USA Today bestseller. And I think we sold 33,000 copies, when the book came out that first month. And then now we're averaging probably 5,000 copies a month if we include Audible, right? So across the formats of paperback, Kindle, and Audible, about 5,000 books. And by the way, we sell more books in Brazil, in Korea, and there's 40 other countries. It's published in 42 languages. It's sold more copies in other countries than it has in America, which is crazy.
Yeah, you've told me that. We hit on in our first interview, I don't know if this is an interview. Our first conversation, that we recorded, we hit on kind of that distribution model. So people can check that out if they want to hear about how you self-published but got paid to promote or to get your book promoted internationally. Yeah, which is pretty neat. Yeah. If you're doing Miracle Morning and you're pressed for time, do you do less of the 6 things, or do you do a shorter version of the 6 things? So
it's really up to anybody in terms of, there's a chapter at the end of the book, the new book, the original book. It's customizing your Miracle Morning to fit your lifestyle. And there's also a chapter in the book called the 6-Minute Miracle Morning. And that sounds like hyperbole a little bit, like some 6-minute abs, right?
Yes.
But it literally was something that I developed. I can picture the morning, like I was rushed for time. I'm like, I like to do a 1-hour Miracle Morning. And I had like 15 minutes, so I had to be out the door. And I go, there's no point. And then I go, wait a minute. something's better than nothing.
Yeah.
What if I just did a 6-minute miracle morning where I set my timer for 1 minute and I did a minute of meditation and I just calm my nervous system, and then timer goes off, I reset it, I pull out my affirmations and I read the affirmations that remind me of the most important things I'm committed to. Timer goes off, right? And then visualization, then exercise. I get up and do a minute of jumping jacks, right? I'm getting blood to the brain, waking up my nervous system. And then I read a page out of a book, and then I journal what I'm grateful for, right? Like, and so I go through the 6-minute miracle morning, and it was literally 6 minutes. And I go, dude, I feel like 80% as fulfilled as if I had done a full hour. That's crazy. So when I wrote the book, I was like, well, I've got to include that in there. So it depends. And if someone's using the app, that's kind of the beauty of it, is you can sort app tracks by, okay, I want an app track that does all 6 savers, and I want it to be under 10 minutes. Or 20 minutes or 30, like you can pick it. And then that way, what's nice about that is it's a done for you miracle morning, right? It's like you're literally like, okay, I don't have time to even think right now. I got to out the door in 10 minutes. Okay. I want all savers and I want 6 minutes. Go.
Yeah. I mean, the app element is so relevant to all businesses because it facilitates the behavior that you want from your end users.
Yeah.
And I think that it's something to think about in business in general, which is if you're selling something, if you have a service, whatever that is, what is the element that you can put in that actually makes the client experience not only better, but inevitable?
Yeah.
What do you think the biggest mistake is that you've made in pushing the miracle morning out?
Probably not finding people that know how to build a business and doing it all on my own. You know, I really believe that the Miracle Morning is a $100 million brand. Mm-hmm. We should have Miracle Morning supplements and Miracle Morning, smoothie recipes and Miracle Morning, I mean, I don't know. There's infinite things that we could have done. I'm building a business is not my strength. Whenever I do personality assessments, and I've stumbled into success and with different aspects of my business, so I'm decent at it, but whenever I do like a personality assessment, I'm the communicator, I'm the performer, right? Like that's where I shine, is you put me on stage, or I can write a book. I can communicate in a way that people get, they understand. But in terms of like crunching the numbers, figuring out how to scale, not my strength. Brad, if you and I partnered, if I brought you into Miracle Morning, you could probably turn it into a $100 million business.
I offered to get your supplement brand off the ground.
Shut up.
Probably like 8 years ago, and you're like, no, my pops is going to do it. My father is doing it.
That's the worst. Okay, so you just told me the biggest mistake that I ever made. Let's do it, man. Like it's a huge. And now another company, Oomzi, they have a Miracle Morning supplement.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, and so I don't know if they have trademarked the category or just the one supplement. But it was, when that happens, you go, why? That's so stupid that I didn't do that.
Yep.
What I have thought about, and I shouldn't, right, let's do this before this airs. Let's go trademark this.
Yep.
But I really do think pre-made organic smoothies, Miracle Morning smoothies that people are delivered to people's houses, just packets that you mix with water and ice.
Yeah.
I think that could be huge. And for me, like I'm not in it for the money first. It's got to be valuable. Like, so I wouldn't put out a supplement line. I see that a lot where brands private label a shitty supplement with all sorts of fillers and crappy ingredients. Like it would have to be, organic and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think that's the biggest opportunity is if I would have brought someone that knew how to build a huge business or said yes to you, damn it, then I think the Miracle Morning would be, at least a $10 million a year business,
Yeah.
It's like around 2-ish. So
one of the things that you tend to do, which I love, is kind of give away the farm when you partner on things.
Yeah.
So your default is to make sure that all people in the equation are winning.
Yeah.
And it's much more important than even picking the right person, probably.
Yeah.
But certainly more important than trying to optimize for ROI. So I think if we find the right person to help with that thing, that's probably the best path.
Yeah.
What do you think the biggest mistake is that new authors make?
Oh, great question. So biggest mistake new authors make is I would say two pieces of it. I would look at the way they write their book, like the content. and then their expectation or their plan to market their book. And in terms of the content, that's part of the reverse engineering where I've gone, okay, why is the Miracle Morning gone? Why is it so sticky? Why are people actually doing it? Because most books, as we know, you don't actually implement, right? People read a book and they trick themselves into thinking, oh, wow, now I know all this stuff that I didn't know before I read the book. That's awesome. I can't wait to read the next book on my shelf, right? And then they just go to the next book and then the next book and the next book. And they're delusionally thinking that each book, that reading it is the accomplishment, right? Like checking it off. And there's some value in that. But of course, if you don't implement, if you read a book on losing weight and you don't do the thing, it's not going to really benefit you other than the knowledge that you have. And so the first mistake authors make is their book does not result in a change in people's behavior.
Yeah, I love that. Why? I'd also say that I don't know that you even get knowledge if you read a book and don't implement anything.
Yeah.
I think more than likely you read a book, don't implement, then you forget.
You forget, yeah.
And so you're probably just a dummy for spending the time reading the book in the first place.
Yeah, it's just an emotional high.
Right.
I'm reading the book. Aha, that feels good. You're entertained.
Yeah.
And so Miracle Morning, it leads to a change in daily behavior. And that's why it is so effective in terms of creating lasting transformation for people, because it changes their behavior. They start actually doing the Miracle Morning. The entire book is designed to hold their hand through all of the self-doubt, fear, and mental objections and obstacles that they might have. The entire book holds their hand through getting through all of those and then leading them and setting them up for success mentally first, and then logistically to implement a Miracle Morning and commit to a 30-day challenge with the idea that, hey, after 30 days, this will be a habit. It will be easy for you. And then you sustain it beyond that and just live your life in 30-day challenges. So that was a big part of it. And for most people, again, your book, it just changes their thinking. So every author, their book should guide people to a behavior change. And again, there's so many nuances in that. Like, okay, if I just said change somebody's behavior, but you don't actually handle the objections that they're having, for me, my entire writing process was like, okay, what are they thinking after this sentence? What are they thinking after this sentence? What are they feeling after this sentence? What objection do they have after this section of the book? Right? What's their fear, their doubt? And that's why I was 6 years and meticulously writing it. And so it handles all of the objections, all of the fears. I'm not a morning person. I've never been a morning person. I've tried and I've failed. I suck at changing habits, right? All of that. So that's the first piece in terms of the content. And then I can talk about the promotion part.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, the promotion part's interesting to me because we talked about this, last time we spoke and recorded, and you had spent the first year promoting the Miracle Morning basically to no good end.
Yeah.
Yeah. You promoted for a year. You were on a fuck ton of podcasts. You spoke a shitload all over the country and you sold like 14,000 copies or something.
Yeah. My goal was 1 million copies. And that was like everything in my heart and soul. I was doing everything I could to sell 1 million, and I was 986,000 copies short.
Now, at some point, you got on Pat Flynn's podcast, which was a lever to get more exposure, sell more. You had a convert. Pat was a curmudgeon in the morning. And the book changed his entire approach. That's unique to you, perhaps. What are the things from a promotional perspective that a new author can do to get a fast start for launching a book?
I don't know about a fast start. I think that's actually the biggest mistake is authors focus on their start. And then based on how successful they are out the gate, determines how motivated they are to keep going. And out the gate. Now, I mean, I used my Cutco skills. I got on and I I warm called. I called everyone I'd ever spoken for. I called you. I called all of my friends, all of my clients. I pre-sold 5,000 copies over the phone, not over email, over the phone. 5,000 copies with a printed out spreadsheet, right? And I would sell 50 copies. And I created packages. I modeled Tim Ferriss. His book was the big book when I was writing. 4 Hour Workweek was the hit when I was writing the Miracle Morning. So I was like, how did he launch his book? So I was modeling, he created this, all these awesome bonus levels where if you buy this many copies, you get this awesome bonus. If you buy 100, if you buy 250, 500, 1,000. So I modeled his promotion, and then I called people to sell those. So that was that. So I had a good start, like 5,000 copies out the gate, but then it dropped to like 300 copies a month because I had no audience. So there was nobody to sustain it. People were just reading the book. So for me, here's the mistake authors make is they don't commit for the long haul. I committed that I will keep promoting this book until I reach until I change 1 million lives one morning at a time. And I thought I could do it in a year. And I was, again, 98.7%, 987,000 copies short. So I tried again in year 2. And I went from 13,000 copies year 1 to 23,000 copies year 2. And I mean, this is like full-time job pretty much, right? I'm right, but I'm making in the hundreds of dollars a month.
How deflating
for these efforts, right?
Yeah.
But I'm getting feedback of this book radically. It saved my marriage. It changed my life. It got me off my depression, whatever. And so I'm like, okay, so I know it works. I just have to keep going. And I will say this, by the time I got on Pat Flynn's podcast, I was averaging 2,000 copies a month. That was like a year and a half later. So after a year and a half, I got to where I was averaging 2,000 copies a month. Yeah, and that was word of mouth at that point. So that's because of the way I structured the content to guide people to changing their behavior. And let me say this on that. The reason that's so important is not only for the personal impact of the person, but if all they do is read your book and feel better and then read the next book, they're not going to talk about your book when they're reading the next book or the next book or the next book. But if your book changed their behavior and they're doing the thing every day that you taught them to do, now they're going to keep talking about the thing they're doing and pointing back to your book. That's why the Miracle Morning is such a word of mouth phenomenon. And that's why a year and a half later, after all those podcasts, most of them which were nobody, small podcasts, no big name podcasts, it was averaging 2,000 copies a month because of the word of mouth that I had built month after month after month after month because people are reading it and they're talking about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. The passion-driven thing for entrepreneurship is interesting because I think it's unusual. And I very much am of the belief that you just need to keep doing shit. And if you're unclear on some grand vision, just keep doing shit. Yeah, absolutely. If you don't know the answer to something, you can act your way out of zero results by just continuing to do shit. Your path changed rather radically a handful of years ago. You had moved to Austin and you text me and said, hey, I don't know what's wrong. I'm going back to the hospital again. This is the second time. And the first time I went, they drained some fluid from my lung. And I'm back again. So I came to the hospital along with David Osborne and we were waiting for the result. And I remember talking to David about it at the time and sort of expressing concern, but back to what we were talking about before we started, I was sort of emotionally dead. And I was like, I don't know, I'll be fine. It's okay. Maybe it'll be cancer, whatever, it's fine. And there's no reason to be concerned about it until we know. And sure enough, it was cancer. And so you had a couple year bout with cancer. How did the experience with cancer and the treatment impact your connection to the mission of Miracle Morning and impact the business in general?
Yeah. And I think it's important. I'll mention that the survival rate was 20 to 30% for my cancer, right? So this wasn't a common cancer. It was a very rare cancer. And when I went into the hospital, you mentioned my lung being drained, my heart was failing and my kidneys were failing. So and they gave me 1 to 3 weeks to live. They said, if you don't start chemo, you have 1 to 3 weeks to live. And I don't fully trust the Western medical system. So I said, let me do my own, due diligence. I called some of the best holistic oncologists in the country. I was like, hey, can I avoid this really intensive chemotherapy regimen they want to put me on? And 2 of these very well-respected holistic oncologists said, nah, unfortunately, your particular cancer, there's no other option. Like you will be dead in a week. Your organs are already shutting down. Chemo is the only thing that can save you at this point. So I reluctantly did chemo. So what it did for me, I don't know. I guess actually I do know. When I had my car accident, I was 20 years old and I immediately was like, how can I use this experience to help other people? And where that comes from is when I was 8 years old, my baby sister Amory died in front of me. She died in my mother's arms at home and heart failure. And my mother, who was of course devastated, I think she was probably 30 at the time, 30 years old, and my sister was 18 months old, and I was 8 years old. My mom and dad were devastated, especially my mom. And but within, I think, 6 months or so, my mother was leading a support group for other parents who had lost children. And then my dad and our whole family, but my dad headed it up. He started a fundraiser to raise money every year. We sold newspapers for an entire day out like on street corners and stuff to raise money for Valley Children's Hospital, where they tried to save my sister's life and they treated her while she was alive. And so I didn't realize it at the time, right? But the seed, I think, was planted that when you go through adversity, when you go through difficult times in your life, whether you say I think it's our responsibility, but that's a choice. You could say, I don't owe anybody anything. That's a choice too. That's fine. Both are equally true. But I believe that it's my responsibility to share what I can that can help other people in any way that I can. And so when I had my car accident, I was like, oh, okay. I remember I told my dad, the doctors called me and they thought I was in denial because I was so happy and upbeat when I'm being told I'm never going to walk again. My femur's broken in half. My pelvis is broken in 3 places. My arm's broken in half. My elbow's shattered. My eye socket shattered. I've got, I'm in bad shape. And I've got metal rods to my body, and I'm in a hospital bed. Like I can't move. And I'm all happy.
It was the drugs.
It was the drugs. No, I actually got off the drugs almost immediately. But anyway, but no, that's a potentially that. But so I told the doctor, or I told my dad, I said, the doctors thought I was in denial because I was happy, that I was delusional and in denial. And I said, Dad, my dad talked to me about it. And he said, hey, how are you really feeling, Hal, when the doctors aren't around and we're not around and your friends aren't around to distract you? Are you depressed? Are you scared? Are you, worried about never walking again? How are you feeling? And I said, Dad, I can't change what happened to me. So there's no point in being all the things that you just mentioned. I'm just grateful that I'm alive. And I'm trying to figure out why did this happen to me? Not from a victim perspective, but from how can I use this experience to help other people? And I said, Dad, I always wanted to be a motivational speaker ever since I started speaking at Cutco conferences a year and a half prior. I said, maybe that's why this happened. Maybe I'm supposed to get through this car accident, this recovery, this experience in the most positive mindset and the most proactive approach that I possibly can. Then I can go teach other people how to do that in whatever challenge they're facing.
So you're blaming Cutco for your car accident?
Yeah. Well, if I wasn't speaking at a Cutco conference that night. But anyway, all that is to lay the foundation and say that, that when I had my car accident, my cancer, 17 years after the car accident, when I was 37 with the cancer, the day that I was diagnosed, the day that I was given a 20% chance of surviving, I called my wife. She was out of town. She was distraught, bawling her eyes out, thinking about her husband dying, understandably. And I said, sweetheart, I know you're scared. I said, but I'd be lying if I didn't say there's a twinge of fear inside of me, but I'm not even thinking about that. I'm thinking about, there is no doubt in my mind that I'm going to beat this cancer. I have unwavering faith in that possibility, and I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to be able to help more people as a result of this. And so going through, you watched it, like when I was in the hospital going through chemo, I'm doing selfie videos. I'm sending them out to the Miracle Morning community, and that wasn't, I'm not trying to sell books. It's just trying to take my experience and help other people. And I'll wrap it up and I'll turn it back to you in a second. I'll just say this. As cliche as the Zig Ziglar quote is, it is as accurate as it can be, which is you can have everything in life that you want if you help enough other people get what they want, right? Steve Jobs helped everybody get a smartphone, and he got everything he wanted. Well, that's
well, since we're on cancer,
since we're on cancer, yeah, right. But like I really believe in, and I think that for certain people, and I'm not pointing fingers, but I think a lot of us, like, being selfish and self-centered is a very real, depending on how we grew up and the environment we grew up, like depending on our psyche, how we're wired, maybe it's my parents. But at one point in my life, I was like, I want my life to be about serving other people. And I believe that if I genuinely focus not on making money, but on helping as many people as I possibly can in all the ways that I can, and I'm smart about it, and I figure out there's got to be ways to monetize the way I'm doing that. I think that will come back to me, and I'll be I'll be good financially. And so that really making it my focus. And so that's it, is when I had cancer, it was like, it just amplified. Oh, this can't be for no reason. I'm going through this so that I can become a better version of myself on the other side and help even more people.
Are you glad that you went through that experience?
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of a, what is that? Byron Katie, who wrote the book Loving What Is. Have you read that, by the way?
No.
Such a good book, dude. You should read it. Byron Katie. Katie Byron? No, Byron Katie. But a phenomenal book. I just reread it a few months ago. But basically she talks about, she's a lover of reality. When people are like, I wish this didn't happen. She's like, well, yeah, but it did. So you can either love that it happened and be totally not just at peace, but actually love it and embrace it and look for the value in it. So she's kind of like what I've always taught, which is like, accept the things you can't change and be at peace. She goes further. No, love the things you can't change. Love the divorce, love the cancer, love the bankruptcy.
Right.
Because what other choice do you have?
Right.
You can hate it and be miserable, but since it's reality, so she just says repeatedly throughout the book, I'm a lover of reality. And so I think it's easier said than done. There were definitely times when I was going through cancer when I'm like, if I was so sick and so miserable that I wanted to die. And I said, if I didn't have a wife and kids, I would just let myself die right now. So for sure, I got in really dark places. But overall, it's just like, it is what it is. It's what happened. And so how can I love that reality, and how can I use that to amplify the good that I do in the world and in my own quality of life?
I mean, obviously I think there are people that look at that and critique that and sort of think, oh yeah, that's some silver lining bullshit. And yeah, you're making the best of a bad situation. But sort of assessing life through the lens of, for me, it's assessing life through the lens of regret is a waste of time.
Yeah.
And everything that got me to this moment formed who I am now.
Yeah.
And every difficult situation created a better, stronger, more valuable version of me.
Yeah.
Leads me to believe that going through that, I would respond with some sense of, I'm glad that I experienced it.
Yeah. And you don't like,
as somebody that's never had cancer, obviously.
Sure. And I mean, and what a wild experience. Like, I was on death's doorway. Like, I love my father-in-law, Merrick, my wife, Ursula, her dad, obviously father-in-law, in case you didn't put those together.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. But like what we're going through right now in society, and depending on the listener, they might think everything's just normal, and this is, I don't think it's normal. But anyway, he escaped communist Poland. And so he sees a lot of what happened that rolled communism out in Poland happening in America, right? So that's each person to determine. But he smiles and he goes, what a fascinating time to be alive. And he said, I'm just grateful I'm alive to see this play out. Like what his biggest concern is like the worst case scenario in America, but he's fascinated by it. And so I wanted to speak to what you said, which is, some people listening go, that's silver lining bullshit. That's making the best of a bad situation. Bad it's a word, it's a label. Like who's to say it's bad?
Yeah.
In fact, I'll give you an example, and you can call this silver lining, but like to me, there are people that love pain.
Yeah.
Right. And so you'd say, no, pain is bad, and go, says who?
Right.
Adversity is bad, says who? Well, no, those types of things are to be avoided, says who?
Yep.
So, that's the thing, if that's our perspective, our paradigm, which is difficult things bad, must avoid them at all costs. Oh no, they're happening. This is terrible. My life is over. God, please, I don't deserve this. Right? It's all perspective.
Yeah.
So you can genuinely, authentically embrace adversity and actually go, God, I'm grateful for this pain.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you a weird story. You wanted some weird stories. I don't know if I've ever told this on a podcast. I was at a party. I was early 20s. I was at UC Davis. I was dating this girl, and I went to a party, and I got hammered. I was so drunk, and I was sitting on the porch. I think it might have even been raining. So I'm like sitting out in the rain on a bench. Everybody's having fun in the party, and I'm sick. And I just start throwing up. And I go, and I think I was reading some sort of book on enlightenment at that time, like Eckhart Tolle or something, right? Just perfect for
Beautiful.
this. And so I catch myself going, before I throw up, I go, God, I don't want to throw up. I hate throwing up. And then because I was reading that book, I realized, wait, I'm resisting reality right now. And then I started throwing up, and I go, how can I love this? How can I genuinely love this? And I sat there just smiling, heaving, and thanking God for that experience, because it was an experience that I was blessed to be having. So that was and I love, like, that's a story I don't tell very often, but it was like a monumental, pivotal shift. Like, who enjoys throwing up?
Yeah.
Maybe no one. And so I go, if I can enjoy this moment, feeling sick with this pounding headache, throwing up, I can enjoy any moment in my life. And that, by the way, is the premise of The Miracle Life, which is the chapter in the new book, and the book it's my next book that I want to write. The premise is, emotional freedom, how do you choose any emotional state you want to experience in any given moment authentically, not faking it, not suppressing the real emotions, but actually be at peace with the things you can't change, enjoy reality. And so, yeah, throwing up at a party was a shift in my consciousness.
There's a delineation between these two concepts, but there are experiences that you put yourself into that create discomfort or pain. And then there are things that happen to you, and you cannot experience or change. And I had a realization in the last few days, actually, that for many, many years, I have spent a lot of time, and it's gone in waves, but I've spent a lot of time doing endurance events.
Yeah.
And longer and longer runs, weird ways to put myself through extreme discomfort and pain.
Yep.
And I got injured and have not done any of that in the last almost 2 years now. And what I was reflecting on was how the deliberate conditioning and the absence of it have changed how I interact with the world. So because I'm not living in a state routinely of discomfort that I am consciously overcoming, meaning I'm going out on an 8 mile, a 10 mile, a 20 mile, a 30 mile run, and inevitably during those times, there are really challenging periods where I am talking to myself and saying, no, get your shit together. You're just here doing this.
Yeah.
You're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep moving.
And part of your brain is going, stop, this is uncomfortable. I don't want to do this anymore.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But because consistently I'm conditioning myself and building another and another and another data point, the other areas of my life, I tend to do the same thing. And with the absence of that stuff, it seems to rub off on the other areas of my life. And I was thinking about just sort of flexing that muscle. And if you're not flexing that muscle consistently, maybe you lose it.
Yeah. It would make sense. So is that what you kind of feel like you're not as, I don't know if resilience is the right word, but like,
I feel like I have,
how would you describe it?
I feel like I have, when I'm in that mode, I have a much stronger mindset.
Yeah.
When I'm consistently pushing myself to do tough things. And when I'm not pushing myself to do tough things, I find myself in a place where I bail.
Yeah.
And not in, tremendous, seemingly life-changing ways, but in the little things.
Yeah.
But the bitch is the little things make the big picture.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It is your whole fucking life. And nobody's holding me accountable.
Yeah.
No, nobody's like, hey, Brad, get your shit together. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Literally this morning, you were like, hey, Brad, why don't you maybe chill out and take care of your body a little bit?
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe you're a little hard on your body, Brad.
Yeah. See, you don't like accountability because you immediately were like, I have to go. I'm going to go do work. As soon as I tried to hold you accountable and give you a little love, you were like, get off the phone.
I did. I literally said, I got to go to the gym right now.
That's right.
It's pretty funny. But I think that to me, one of the most valuable things about your work and how you spend all your time and energy is that it helps indoctrinate people into patterns that have created an accountability in their life that will have other ripples in their life.
Well, and the beauty of it is doing it in the morning, it then affects the whole day.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you have a shit day and then at the end of the night, you're like, all right, I should do some, personal development and do some good habits. And then you're like, I feel disciplined, but then you might lose it while you're sleeping. So the idea that you start your day, I think how you start your day sets the tone and the context and the direction and the energy for the rest of the day. So if you have that purposeful morning, you have a purposeful day. So, yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I have a bunch of random shit that we talk about, but I think we'll save it for another time.
All right.
Maybe we'll record in your studio because I know the address.
Oh, yeah. And actually, I'm about to kind of have a studio now because before my office was too small. It was a little home office. Yeah. But now, have you been out? Oh, you haven't seen it since it's set up, right?
Not since it's
the new office. I was
there for the 4th of July.
It's nice. It's got a nice couch in there. And yeah, I mean, it's not like, your office, but.
And we can lock the doors so none of your animals can come in.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
No, it is funny. I was doing I was on a Zoom call and I was sitting on my couch in the office and my laptop and they go, are those chickens outside the window? I said, actually, that one's a turkey, but those are chickens. Yes.
Well, you have a giant tortoise too, right? Tank.
Oh man. Do you want it? Do you want a tortoise? I've been trying to get rid of, no, he's a wonderful, and I'd hate to lose him, but if you want, he's 37 years old. He's very mature. Him and Professor would get along phenomenally. They'd be perennial best friends.
I would totally have a tortoise, but I live downtown in high rise.
Dang it.
I don't know where it would go.
Is there a yard here?
There is a yard here.
There you go, dude. Tank, and his Tank, it's a cool, is Tank the tortoise? Like, it's kind of cool. Chicks dig him. God, I wish I was single with him.
I saw Tank eat an apple once, and it was, I was like, I'm keeping my fucking fingers away from that.
Dude, he devours it. I know, I'm like, the first time, I'm like, oh, shouldn't we cut that up for him? And he can eat 30
destroy anything.
No. We just finished on a really strong note. I think we should end it there.
We did. Tank. We'll get a picture of Tank.
Yeah.
Where do you want to point people? That's where we end, is where do you want to send people in general?
MiracleMorning.com is the hub. You can watch the Miracle Morning documentary for free, which has Mel Robbins and Lewis Howes and Robert Kiyosaki and Brendan Burchard and Robin Sharma and Brad Weimert. Most importantly, so miraclemorning.com, you can, it'll point to the app, it points to the book. If you want to just go to Amazon and buy the books, of course. But that's where I would have people download the free app, watch the free movie and buy the book. And you do that, you're going to have a really successful start to your Miracle Morning. And if you've read the original book, the last thing I'll say is, the new updated and expanded edition, it is a new edition. 70 new pages of content, new chapters. So even if you read the Miracle Morning like 5 years ago, now is, I think it's a great time. Like, this is a great refresher. Go get the updated and expanded edition.
Love that, man. Well, it's always good to hang out. It's fun.
Yeah.
For me, anyway.
Half the reason that we did this is because you're like, all right, me and Hal have not been hanging out often enough. We should do a podcast.
That's completely true.
I knew it was. I was going to start the podcast by saying, and I forgot.
We started the podcast by saying, what should we talk about?
Yeah.
And you were like, we should talk about the business behind the Miracle Morning. I'm like, no, we did that last time.
That's right. All right. Love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
All right.